People have been arguing about this ever since SEO has existed. What is Google's #1 ranking factor? Well, spoiler alert, it's not backlinks, it's not keywords. Let's figure out what it is. Roll the film.
You have to have really good content, and that means you have to have content that serves a purpose for the user. It's something that users need and or want.
So it's relevance. And you might have heard that word tossed around every once in a while, but what actually is relevance?
That's a good question. So what relevance is all about is matching the content with what people are actually looking for. Not even necessarily just what they typed in, but what they meant with the type. So with what they searched. So we've been saying this for years. Google's job is really like simple. Help people who are searching find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's it. And so if you create the content that people are actually looking for, then Google is going to lift you up in the search rankings because you created that content. You are the relevant content. And that's what relevance is all about. It seems obvious. It seems very simple, right? Create the content people are looking for. Yet bloggers make some pretty huge errors, some pretty huge mistakes in this arena. What we tend to do is we create the content we think people need. We create the content many times that they actually do need, but it's not the content that they're looking for, and that's where the big mistake is. So today, we've got 3 tips, 3 strategies for how to make sure that you create content that is highly relevant to the search that's highly relevant to the search that people are actually making in Google.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one is making sure that you have the correct format for the post that you're writing. So one example that Ricky was mentioning as we were planning this video is he was deciding between purchasing a Fitbit or the Garmin version. What was your experience there, and how could we write a blog post that would fit that circumstance?
Yeah, so in that situation, like I really wanted to just compare these 2 products head to head. Like what are the most important features of both, and like how do they compare to each other? And then I could easily make a decision about which one I wanted to buy. Because there are certain things that matter to me. I wasn't going to wear it swimming, so I didn't need it to be waterproof, but I did need it to track my heart rate all the time without having to wear a chest strap.
Sure.
And at the time, that's what the Garmin required. So that was a deal breaker for me. What I got when I searched that was YouTube videos, which were awesome because the guy was able to show me like, I have both of these products and I've tested them and here's what I think.
Yeah.
But what would have been super helpful for me if in a blog post format was like, what if you had just a table, a comparison table, with information that's not just the obvious stuff that the companies post on their pages already.
Yeah.
Like, don't just give me the stats. I can look that up on Amazon. They do product comparison tables. Give me like a product comparison that shows me, 1, that you actually have put your hands on the products, if you have, and 2, that helps me beyond the stuff that's super obvious. In other circumstances, sometimes the best format might be like a table that's just full of pieces of information, right? Maybe I want to know, one that we've done on campers before is like what RV length fits in different national parks.
Yeah.
If you just give me that in a big table, like that's helpful for me.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's a bulleted list. An example here, we had at our creator studio, we had a writer write an article about dirt bikes under $2,000. What would have been really helpful is a bulleted list of makes and models of dirt bikes that cost less than $2,000 new, and another bulleted list of dirt bikes that's like used dirt bikes, you know, a 3-year-old this costs under $2,000. That just is like, here's the models and here's the average price.
Yeah, that's
like,
not what he did though.
That's not what he did. We're going to talk about what he did in the next example because it fits that too. But think about that. Like, what's the best format?
Yeah, exactly. So the second one is about staying laser focused on your topic. And the way that we want to do that here in the second tip is to focus on every aspect of your title. What you've done in your title is you've done the keyword research, the search analysis, to decide what the best possible title is for the search that someone will be searching. You want to make sure, because of that, that you stay focused on every facet of the title. Where we run into problems is, and that's what we're about to talk about in this dirt bike example, is when you start venturing off to the side of only focusing on one part of the title. So what did that look like in this dirt bike article?
So in this case, it was like, you know, dirt bikes, buying a dirt bike for under $2,000. And this user or this writer, he took that and he thought, okay, well, they want to buy a dirt bike for under $2,000. There's a good chance they're going to buy used.
Yeah.
So then what he started doing is writing basically a buyer's guide for how to pick and test out and check a used dirt bike. Well, now we've lost focus from that. How do I buy one for under $2,000?
Yeah.
Is it somewhat relevant? Yes, but it's not relevant for all the people searching it. Maybe it's relevant for 60%, maybe 40%.
Yeah.
And so because we've lost relevancy with a lot of the content in that post, now Google looks at that whole post and wonders, is this content actually relevant to the search? Not only that, but the users that come to the post look at that and they say, oh, well, this part isn't what I wanted, and they bounce out, and they pogo stick, right? They go to another blog post that gives them that list of dirt bikes that are under $2,000. So kind of a fatal error for that blog post.
Yeah, it might seem obvious when you hear that, like, oh, that's obviously not what they were looking for. But if you think about it, a lot of people are messing up in this way. When someone types in buying a dirt bike for under $2,000, it's obvious that what they're looking for now is a list of dirt bikes under $2,000. But it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'll give them a step-by-step guide on how to do it.
Well, and what's happening is he's probably looking for how does he add length to this blog post, right? And so he's looking for, well, what's the user's next question? Maybe they're looking for, how do I find a good used dirt bike?
Yeah.
When really he needed to stay more focused on the entire topic, which, you could do that by having more sections of the article that are, if a new dirt bike costs $3,000, how old does it need to be before it's only $2,000, right?
Yeah.
So which models can I look for used that are likely to be under there? And you could go into detail explaining that beyond what was just in that bulleted list and still get the length that you want in a blog post. But here's what we're finding is that the quality of the content, providing it in the format that's going to be most helpful for people and providing them the level of helpfulness that they need for the specific thing they're looking for is more important than the length of the content.
Right.
We started having our writers spend a pillar amount of time, right, for a pillar post, a long post, but ending up with only about a 2,500 word article. But that 2,500 word article had some primary research, it had data tables, it had pictures, it had all sorts of stuff. So, and that format and that level of focused helpfulness was pillar level content with less words. And I think that is that's what's helped that content to rank really high, really fast. It didn't have to be super long to be able to do that.
Exactly. So the third tip is all about speaking your user's language, using terminology that they will understand, that they will engage with. The example that we thought of for this one is if you are a programmer and you're making a website all about writing code, if I'm searching for the beginner's guide to HTML basics, I'm not looking for your jargon, the technical knowledge you learned in school. I'm looking for, this is a function I want to complete with HTML.
Right.
Teach me how to get there in the simplest terms possible, right?
Exactly. And that's what you get a lot with readers of blogs is people who are a beginner or they're coming to you for some knowledge, some wisdom that you have that they don't have yet. So if you speak to them at your level, you're probably speaking over their head.
Yeah.
Right? And with coding in particular, this has happened to me a lot where I'm like, okay, I want to make this specific customization. I know I'm going to need a string of code to do that. I'm going to go look up how to do that. And I get to a post that uses all sorts of jargon that I don't know and then gives me a string of code. And I look at that, and at first glance, I can't tell, is that CSS or is that HTML? And based on that, it's where do I put this?
Yeah.
Do I put it in the blog post? Is it a script I can just put in the blog post? Because it's HTML and it'll, or is it CSS? Do I need to put that in my global CSS? Where do I even put this piece of code? You've only given me part of the answer. And even if you've tried to give me the rest of the answer, you've done it in a way that I didn't understand. Now, all you coders out there are laughing at me right now because you're you can't tell the difference between CSS and HTML.
Yeah.
And, if you're not somebody that lives that all the time, and you see code sometimes, and you know what to do with it, but it's not your main thing, yeah, that's how it's going to be. And you can sit there and laugh at your reader all day long for not understanding your terminology, or you could help them. And you could use that terminology that they're going to understand. Now, what that does is two things. Like using using advanced terminology, jargon, causes two problems. One is for the user. If you don't actually end up helping them because you use jargon they don't understand, they pogo stick again, right? They're going to leave your blog post and find somebody else's who actually helped them. The second way that it causes problems is it confuses Google. Google sees a search that uses normal people terminology and then see a blog post that uses totally different terminology. And it's a computer that's looking at these two and trying to match them up. Well, if your terminology that you use in the blog post doesn't match the terminology used in the search, like Google's smart and they use semantic search, they can tell synonyms, but industry jargon goes a little bit beyond just synonyms. And it can make it difficult for Google to recognize that this content is relevant for this search.
Yeah, so not only do they not match your content with the simplicity that people are looking for, they also see that the users who come onto this site are pogo sticking. And so all around, it's a big SEO problem.
That's exactly right. So just to rehash here, 3 things you should do to make sure your content stays super relevant so that you can meet Google's number one search criteria, which is this relevancy. Number 1 is use the format that's going to be the most helpful for your reader. Number 2 is stay laser focused on the actual search term, the thing that people are actually typing into Google. Make sure that the content is all hyper relevant for that specific search. And then number 3 is use terminology that your reader will understand and the type of terminology that they're likely to be searching in the search bar. Do those 3 things. It's going to be a lot easier for your content to stay relevant for the user, and therefore your rankings are just going to shoot way up.
We share SEO tips like this all the time, both on YouTube and through email. If you want to follow us, you can go to incomeschool.com/SEO. You'll never miss another SEO update from us again.